I have another call that I think might be frustrating, but we'll see how it goes. I want to talk to Charles, who's calling in from Georgia. Charles, you're live on Talk Heathen. What's going on? Charles, you're live on Talk Heathen. Oh, there you go. How's it going, Charles?
Okay. How y'all doing?
Doing all right. How about yourself?
Doing good. Doing good. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to talk about slavery. I've seen a YouTube video, and everybody is like embarrassed of the Bible as far as slavery is concerned, and I'd like to go over that and just elaborate with it a little bit. That's okay.
That's okay, Charles. I'll tell you this though. We've had this conversation numerous times, and I have not been elaborated on by anyone that's ever called into the show about this topic. So if you can give me any critical insight that I don't already know, you would be a first. So that's the precedent that we have set for this conversation. And we've talked about it a lot. So, just fair warning.
Okay. Well, the Bible doesn't. I hear you talk about it, and it's like it's an embarrassment to us Christians that we've had slavery in the Bible.
Well, it should be. Yeah, I think the ownership of other people should be an embarrassing thing. Yeah, I don't.
It isn't an embarrassing thing because God is not anti-slavery. He's a proponent of slavery.
I actually agree.
And so
with
you're
you.
not. And so why aren't you embarrassed by that? Why aren't you embarrassed by that?
Because it says in the Bible many times that we are servants, and the actual translation of that is slaves. So we are slaves of God. You are a slave. Everybody's a slave of something. Okay. It says if you're not a slave of God, you're a slave of sin. So you're always, you're a slave of something. You got a boss that you're a slave to. You have a wife that you're a slave to.
No, these are not the same thing at all. And you know what, Charles? We've heard this argument before, and we've heard people call in and say that employment is similar to slavery, and that is in no way the case. Yes. There's nothing similar about me signing a contract with somebody for me willingly to go into work to receive a paycheck versus someone who is forced against their will to be abused by another human. Those are in no way the same.
And Charles, if you view I don't know if you have Charles, if you have a wife, listen, Charles, if you have a wife and if you're talking about your relationship as that of a slave relationship, this is a personal note, but I would suggest that's not a healthy relationship. I don't think you should view your partner as being in slavery with somebody, but that's a side thing, right? I mean, like you're talking about this metaphor that Christians have used, which I grew up hearing a lot, which is, oh, we're all slaves to something. I mean, we all have things that we're relied on or have particular relationships with, but that is so different from the act of owning another human being and preventing them from living their own lives. Like that metaphor only goes so far. It doesn't actually describe the reality of what people actually living in slavery even today live like, and I think it doesn't do it justice. So it's really not the same thing.
You're talking about a slavery of having somebody beat you and it being,
which is what the Bible describes.
It's a terrible thing to be, which the Bible describes in Egypt. And if you notice, God came to his people's defense there, and he made the Egyptians pay a terrible price for what they did to the Egyptians.
Well, first of all, the Jewish people, first of all, hold on, Charles. It wasn't just in Egypt. The Jewish people also owned slaves, right? The tribes of Israel specifically also owned slaves. Like that's part of the narrative of the Bible.
Giving you an example of what happens when you abuse your power as a slave owner. Okay, God made.
No, so here's what actually happened. Yeah, so the Jews were enslaved in Egypt according to the Bible, and then you are agreeing that was a bad thing, but then it's okay that these same people who were supposedly enslaved went and enslaved other people. So what really happened here is God was not. I agree that he's taking a very pro-slavery stance, but it's more of an ethnocentrism thing there with that people group of saying like these are the people who are allowed to own other humans, but when anyone else owns other humans, that's bad. So it's not. I think you're drawing an equivocation between different things that happen.
There's also an example of good slavery in the Bible. Would you like me to share it with you?
No, I don't think there is actually. See, you think our problem is Charles. You think our problem is that the slave owners had an overreach of power, and we don't like it when slave owners abuse their slaves. That's actually not our problem. Our problem is the owning of other people as an institution. That's our problem. We don't think that should exist, period. And we don't think that if there is a just God, that he would also allow that to exist, or it be remotely in support of it, which the God of the Bible is in some capacity.
But that's just it. Slavery is not a choice. You are a slave. You're a slave of sin, or you're
no, Charles.
Which is why we have a problem with it.
Nobody is restricting me from leaving my house and doing what I want to do with my life, except like the state. But that's like a little bit different. It's not the same thing as somebody threatening me with a rod to like, do their specific will. Like, you understand that's super different, right?
Well, I mean, yeah. If you have bad slavery, yes, it is super difficult. But if you have slavery that is from a loving slave owner who takes care of you and provides for all of your needs, and
Charles,
to a loving relationship, then slavery is a good thing.
I have a proposition for you, Charles. Would you like to be my slave? I'll treat you really well.
Because you'd be a bad slave owner.
Whoa! Hey, how do you know that? How do you know?
Because you're human.
What if I was you are okay? Wait a minute. So aren't human beings are bad slave owners? Yeah, aren't all slave owners human beings?
Well, for one thing,
what do you say?
You're an atheist, okay? You don't have the moral fortitude to protect.
Whoa, Charles. Hold on.
So you're the one that comes onto the show that says that there's a type of slavery that is good, and then you're saying that atheists, and we're over here saying that slavery in no way is good, and yet we're the ones who lack a moral compass.
Yeah. Here's Charles. If I was a Christian, would you be okay with me being your slave owner?
With your slave ownership, whereas the Jews did have rules, and for the first time in history,
they had rules that ended with people either dying or almost dying. They did not have safe rules for their slaves.
To their slaves.
Charles, if I follow all the rules of the Bible, if somebody followed all the rules of the Bible, just like me, if I became a Christian, follow all the rules of the Bible, would you become my slave?
There's no reason to. You're not taking my.
Why not?
My city and destroying me. And I'm not.
Oh, okay. So if I'm destroying, Charles, if I go to Georgia right now and destroy your city as a Christian slave owner, you'd actually be okay with me being your slave owner?
If it meant me dying or being a slave, yeah, I'd be a slave.
So what about having neither one of those happen? How about nobody invades other people's cities and takes anybody as property? Why are these the only two options that you have, dying or slavery? We're saying the alternatives are slavery or not. We're assuming that we're not invading a city. Just between those two alternatives, which would you rather have, Charles?
But people sold themselves into slavery all the time in the past. Okay, they did it.
Yeah, and it's not good that happens.
So
they shouldn't do it.
We shouldn't do that. Charles, you agree?
Well,
people should not.
You wanted to. Charles, that was the rules back then.
Oh my God, Charles! No, listen. Yeah, it was the rules, and they were bad rules. You understand? Like that sort of thing. We don't think that people, like, as a last resort, because they have no other economic option, should sell themselves to slavery. I actually think that's a bad thing. And I actually think that if there was a God who was just, he would also think that's a bad thing, right? Why would you, if you were to organize society, Charles, I seriously doubt that you would organize it as such to say, well, if people are in poverty or in destitute living conditions, that they should sell themselves into slavery in order to improve that. I actually think that you're a better person than that, and you wouldn't suggest that that's the most optimal form of society. Unless I'm wrong, Charles, but I don't think you would do that. So my question is, why should it have ever happened? Why should it have ever been a thing?
Where would you? Let's reverse the roles. Okay?
No, I want you to answer the question, Charles.
You're starving to death, and you come to me. You say, "Hey, for $500 or whatever it might be, I'll be your slave for a year. Please feed me. Okay? Please take care of me. Please take care of all of my needs, and I'll be your slave." And I said, "Okay." Okay, that would be
no, because hold on, Charles. So you're saying you're creating this hypothetical situation that is a terrible situation. We could think of plenty of other reasons or ways that we could solve this problem. If you were hungry and needed food and didn't have any money, there are better ways to handle that than I'm going to make you my slave and give you the money. There are reasons why we've, as a society, developed organizations to help people in need like that. You can also just give them the money if that's what you want to do, and then they can go buy food, or you can buy them some food. There are plenty of alternatives besides enslaving them. So I think it's not a good analogy to say your only two options are this person starves to death or you make them a slave. This is not a good way to think about this.
We evolved into that. We developed that. Okay, this wasn't developed 2,000-3,000 years ago. The world was a different place back then.
So we improved. Society got better.
Yeah,
Society got better.
Yeah. What? So what? And why was it even there? I mean, like, if God is in control and God is the leader of the Jewish people, and we're talking about a long lineage of judges and kings, if you believe the biblical narrative, right? In the entirety of that time, from the book of Genesis to the book of Revelation, there isn't a single admonishment of the institution of slavery. That not one time has any biblical writer ever sat down and said, actually, this whole system of owning other people is actually something we shouldn't do. It's never happened. Like if this is really a God-inspired text and this is a God-inspired people, you would think that they would sit down and really rethink things like we have today. But I guess they didn't. And I think it's because you pointed on something here, Charles. We aren't the same people as we were back then. And I think the people back then were okay with it. And their religion didn't inform them of that otherwise, which we believe as evidence to be not the most perfect religion. Not the most morally advisable position to take, So
here's my last question for you, Charles, is that if humans have improved our rules and our societies over time, how come humans made that better and God never could?
Because that was done by the Christian influence. The first country that did away with slavery was Haiti.
But wasn't God didn't God exist before the Christian religion? So would you say that God was influencing this the entire time? Did the church correct for God's mistake? Did the church fix what God messed up?
Yes, they did at a terrible price.
So God messed something up and humans had to step in and fix it. Is that what you were saying here?
Yeah, God. Yeah, we're in a free will world. Everybody has their own will.
Okay, so God messed up.
No, God didn't mess up. He gave us free will, and in order to have a world,
you just said that God messed up.
We have to have a free will. By having free will, we've done things in this world that are terrible. Okay, and we as people have to fix it. So God gave us the time and the ability to change that. And after millions of Christians died, we did away with slavery.
But God was the one that said it was good in the first place.
Yeah, and just to be fair, and just to clarify, you are saying that Christians who were slave owners were actually not doing a good thing.
Yeah, they weren't doing a good thing. No, it's terrible having slaves like that.
Wow. Okay, so that we got it. Slavery is bad.
I agree.
Thank you, Charles. I agree. Slavery is bad. It shouldn't have happened. And I mean, like, to say that Christians were the first nations to stop slavery is like saying, oh, white people are the least racist people because we stopped all those anti-racist laws. Like, yeah, they were the people in power, bud. They were the ones that like had the power to do that in the first place, you know? And like, I don't know if you know this, but outside the Western world, not every single civilization on Earth practiced the institution of slavery, especially on the level that Christian countries did. Christian countries committed the worst acts of chattel slavery that the world has ever seen, and like, it's why we have the world that we live in now. We are still seeing the ramifications of that. But look, if you want to believe that somehow Christian slavery is better than regular slavery, which was the argument you seem to be making. You seem to be okay with that being a bargain for people who are poor and destitute. Then go ahead. I don't know. I don't really want to have this conversation anymore. I think that's going to be the end of that call, certainly. But yeah, it's the slavery talk again, folks. It never ceases to amaze me how far people will go to defend this stuff, right, Ben?
Yeah, no, and we definitely had some contradictions in there as we went. So
yeah, well, I guess you kind of have to, if you're going to have a worldview that says this kind of slavery was okay, but it's good that we don't do slavery anymore, even though this kind was okay.